Welcome to Authors in Conversation. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Deborah Grays, who's written a beautiful book along with Jane Karskens, and it's called To Dementia with Love. Now, as far as titles go, I think that's just a beautiful way to put things into, let's call it perspective, but I'll let you talk to me about that.
I obviously cared for my husband, Don Swan, who had dementia for about 8 years. And it was a big shock to me, I think, when he was diagnosed, and I was in a great deal of denial, which is part of the process in the book. But I think when I was actually caring for Don, I was very lucky that I was able to keep Don at home and actually was still working full-time as the CEO of the College of Pathologists. But I did actually need help from two carers, or some three carers actually. And it was two of those carers, Romy Baker and Anya Forster, that said to me that you really need to write this down to get a different message across about the fact that dementia is it's just not a terrible thing all the time. You can actually make the most of it and live life as normally as you possibly can and make your loved one feel very, very special and cared for. So I decided to actually write the book, but I'm a hopeless writer. And I've known Jane Karskens for many years. We used to work together on a magazine called Pathway when I was the CEO of the College of Pathologists. And one day she rang me to say, "Have you got any more work at the college, Deb?" And I said, "No, I don't at the college, but I'm thinking of writing a book in relation to my experience with Don." And she wonderfully agreed to actually help me do so. So Jane, I'll hand over to you and you can outline what you actually did next.
Yes, of course. So on that phone call, Deborah asked me to write the book. And I said yes straight away because I knew Deborah and I knew Don and I knew Deborah and I could work together. We had done so for 8 years and I just knew how much of a wonderful person she was. And we had such a lovely relationship already. So I didn't hesitate. It was funny because there's a poem in the front of the book and I put the phone down from Deborah and thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? So I wrote this poem and I thought this is going to be the outline for the book. And I literally wrote it within 10 minutes and it hasn't changed. And it's at the beginning of the book and I sent that poem back to Deborah. And I think I said, Deborah, I think this is the roadmap or something.
Yes, you did. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I read the poem and I was in tears and I thought, yes, this is the approach I want to go. Yeah, exactly. So.
Because I've thought about it and I've thought if anybody else approached me to write a book, I would probably have said no.
Very lucky then.
It was just a privilege. And we've had many meetings together. Even though I did, 99% of the writing, it was an absolute joint effort. We spent many, many, many days at her house when she lived in Sydney. Lots of tears, lots of laughter. And it was like being handed a 70,000 piece jigsaw puzzle that we had to put back together, and we actually found some missing pieces.
One of the things I think that was very staggering was that I was in a lot of denial in relation to Don's diagnosis. He'd been a very successful businessman and very bright and a lovely personality. He was 28 years older than me, and I always knew that, obviously there was going to be that difference. But I always assumed it was going to be a physical illness, not Alzheimer's, because he was so bright and aware. But he was obviously, he was just one of those people that unfortunately did get the disease. But when we were actually writing the book, I did actually discover a discharge summary which did have the words dementia in it, which I'd actually not taken on board when I was going through that pathway. So it was one of those things that it was like I really was in denial. And I think that's one of the messages in the book that, as a doctor, I'm a medical practitioner myself, I was not able to actually see the diagnosis of dementia. I was in denial about it. And that's something that I think we want to encourage people to do it at an early stage because of all the therapies and things like that you can access these days as well. So
yes, look, it's such an interesting thing though, isn't it? The mind and what it can do.
Exactly.
And there was what was going on with Don's mind, but at the same time, as the carer, going through the journey, but has that sort of 1 degree removed.
Yes.
Really, the journey is quite a one for everybody involved, I dare say.
Absolutely.
You and the writing, I would imagine, could have been at times quite cathartic.
Oh, it was very cathartic. And I think one of the things that we really love in the book is there is a timeline that actually explains the stages I think that Don went through on his journey. And we hope that will help people to recognise those sorts of things that, even as a doctor, you don't realise in some ways that the physical changes that happen as well. It's not just the mental changes. And as we went through his journey, obviously he'd become weaker and ultimately was incontinent and actually was in a wheelchair and those sorts of things. But that's important, I think, to think about, because I hadn't really thought too much about it myself, I must confess. So it just ways to prepare. But also it gives you an opportunity to think, well, how can we get around this issue and plan a little bit ahead and those sorts of things. So I think that was the important part, that you could expect what's going to happen, and then things like getting prepared to actually buy a wheelchair or those sorts of things. So it was good from that point of view. So.
And how did Don cope himself with the news initially?
Look, he had a very short period of time, I think, when he was aware of the diagnosis. So he started to worry about his memory probably about 10 years ago, or 10 years before he died. And we had a good friend who was a psychiatrist, and he had to talk to him about it. And Noel didn't think it was anything serious at that stage. Well, that's what he told me. And we also had an assessment done by a psychiatrist, and they said everything was normal at that stage of the game. But it became evident that it wasn't to be. And I think it was only about 6 months that he was aware that something was happening. So he became very focused on his finances, spent hours talking to his financial advisor and those sorts of things. And that, I think, was good because he loved finances. So it kept him occupied in some sort of way, sort of thing. But it was certainly not his normal self as to how he was dealing with things. So, but I think that was where we did try to normalise his life. And I think I didn't. I think that was one of the reasons I was given all these books by people to say, "Oh, this is how you've got to treat a demented patient," and all those sorts of things. And I started doing what one of the books said, and Don looked at me like I had 6 heads and thought I was really strange. Why are you behaving like this to me now? And I thought, well, that's silly. I know my husband best. I love him dearly and I know him best. So I threw those books away and I thought we're just going to make our own pathway. And that's what we did. So we normalised life as much as possible. We still went out to dinner. We went to the theatre. We went overseas regularly in relation to it. And that was a thing that helped, I think. And that was obvious, I think, to me, that right up until the time he died, he still could actually recognise me, and I'm sure of that. So it was just making things as normal as possible, treating him with dignity. He was always a dapper dresser. We made sure he actually got dressed all the time and all those sorts of things to actually make him feel as normal as he possibly could. And I think he was happy. He had his moments when he got a little bit stroppy, but on the whole, he was enjoying himself, that's for sure. So.
And I saw a beautiful LinkedIn post of yours where Silent Night.
Oh, yes.
At the Christmas time.
Oh, yes. It was so special. It was very special because we were on a Christmas cruise with all the family, including my mother and all Don's kids and grandkids. And it was a special one because we knew he wasn't particularly well, and neither was my mother. So it was just lovely. And Christmas Eve, they had carols on the ship, and Silent Night started, and his little eyes just lit up, and he smiled, and he was non-verbal at that stage of the game, and he just sang word perfect, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was just amazing.
Fantastic.
Yes.
But Jane, from your perspective, you have a lot of broad experience. Your journalism goes across a lot of areas, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It
What
has.
have you learned over those years of talking to so many people in so many conditions?
I think I've learned that life is precious. Mostly, I've also learned that everyone has a story. You could walk past anybody in the street and sit down, and I guarantee that if you could find the most incredible stories out of everybody. Everyone's life is just so different.
So true.
And I've always loved talking to people. Like before I was a journalist, I was a registered nurse. And I used to love night duty because if it was ever quiet, I'd find someone who was awake and I'd just sit and ask them questions all night about their life. They uncovered some of the most incredible stories. So that's pretty much what I've learned over the years. Everyone has a story. Life is precious, non-judgmental and kind, because you never know what people are going through.
Kind is a really underused word.
It is actually, yes.
It's a beautiful word. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, I don't want to go on a soapbox or anything, but wouldn't the world be a different place?
Yeah, people are kinder to each other, exactly.
Kinder and reminded about that.
Exactly.
And I also saw my role writing this book, to be honest, as looking after Deborah. I was very conscious of how fragile she was when I started.
Okay.
It was very clear to me. It wasn't to Deborah because she's this, I have this go get him doctor, CEO lady. But underneath that, and I think from all my experience of talking to so many people in so many countries, because I've worked as a journalist in a few countries, I could feel how fragile she was. So there were times, wasn't there, Deborah, when I'd call it for the day?
Yes, absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
that's enough.
We've
No,
just
when
done
I
enough.
pushed it too hard.
Mhm.
We pieced the story together, and as the story came together, I feel like Deborah came back together again.
I did, yes.
And she became lighter and stronger in herself
Wow.
as words filled the page.
Yeah,
Mm.
it helped tremendously in relation to the healing, and because grief is a terrible thing, and you've got to work through it, and it certainly helped me a lot. And Jane was just a wonderfully supportive person, and we were close friends before, but we were even closer now. So
It might have been a lot of champagne at the end of those days.
absolutely,
we can't confirm or deny that.
no, exactly,
God, I can just imagine the book launch.
exactly. It was fun.
It was fun.
And Jane, now I need to know what your book is about that you've
It
written.
was actually about grief.
Oh,
Because in my life, I had lost my brother to a car accident and then helped nurse my mother for many years. She had a brain tumor, I think, from the grief. And then my father died very quickly after that,
right.
quite young in my life. So, and it was pretty hard going at some points. And I thought, well, I need to put a stop to this. So I did what Deborah knows you can do. I wrote my way out of it.
Yes,
I love
exactly.
that. Yes, yes. And what's the name of the book? I just say it because anybody watching this, I don't know anyone who dodges grief, but it's when you're stuck in that space that, gosh, just reading a book that externalizes it a little bit, you know?
It's called Unstuck, Rescuing Yourself from Unresolved Grief.
Oh, I love it. Unstuck. Okay. And of course, it's To Dementia with Love. That's Deborah's book.
Yes,
So
that's right.
I really appreciate you both so much for sharing this with us. And I'm going to be buying both books. I now
Oh,
need
that's
to
very
read
kind
them.
of you.
Oh, not at all. Well, they're totally relevant to me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So over and out for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Jane. Okay,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Jane.